This opening slide introduces a provocative premise. Combining yohimbine and caffeine increases stimulation, but does it also increase the danger? The tagline makes it clear that the focus here is on stacked stimulants and the potential consequences of using them together. In the supplement world, yohimbine and caffeine are both touted as fat-burning and energy-boosting compounds. When paired, some products promise to melt stubborn fat and provide explosive energy. However, the union of two powerful stimulants can create more stress on the body than either alone. In this presentation, we will unravel why this stack is tempting, what research says about its efficacy, how it affects heart rate, blood pressure, and anxiety, and who should avoid it. By the end, you will have the tools to weigh the true risk-to-reward ratio of combining these stimulants. This slide sets the tone with a key question. Is combining yohimbine and caffeine a secret weapon against stubborn fat, or is it an example of stimulant overload disguised as a shortcut? Advertisements often suggest that stacking stimulants is the key to unlocking hard-to-lose fat and achieving supercharged workouts. In reality, there is little evidence to support significant fat loss from this combination, and much evidence pointing to heightened physiological stress. Yohimbine and caffeine both stimulate the nervous system, and when used together, the effect is compounded. The slide invites you to question marketing hype and to consider whether the promise of faster fat loss justifies the potential for increased anxiety, insomnia, elevated heart rate, and blood pressure. Throughout this presentation, we will examine whether this stack is a smart strategy or simply a risk disguised as a quick fix. Here we weigh the purported benefits against the clear risks. Stacked stimulants are marketed as a way to squeeze more fat burning and sharpen focus, implying that the more stimulation you apply, the better the results. However, both yohimbine and caffeine independently increase anxiety, heart rate, and blood pressure. When combined, these effects are magnified, leading to jitteriness, palpitations, and disrupted sleep. For some, the short-term buzz may feel satisfying, but the presentation emphasizes that your health and well-being are more valuable than a fleeting sense of energy. When evaluating supplements, it is essential to consider whether the incremental benefits justify the physiological and mental stress. In many cases, the reward does not outweigh the risk, especially when proven methods like a calorie deficit and proper training yield better outcomes without the dangers. Why do supplement companies pair yohimbine with caffeine in the first place? This slide explores the motivations. First, there is the fat loss hype. Advertisers claim that combining these ingredients helps burn stubborn fat. Second, the stack promises pre-workout energy and mood enhancement, appealing to those seeking a quick lift before exercise. Third, multi-stimulant formulas sell excitement over evidence, offering a long ingredient list to draw attention. Marketing often outruns the science. Companies push the narrative that more stimulants equate to better results without rigorous research to back up those claims. Understanding these motivations helps consumers see beyond the marketing and recognize that excitement and novelty are not substitutes for safety and proof of efficacy. Before discussing the combination, we need to understand the individual components. Yohimbine is an alkaloid derived from the bark of the yohimba tree. The bark contains many related compounds, and yohimbine is just one of them. Supplements may also contain synthetic yohimbine hydrochloride, which offers more precise dosing but is still a potent stimulant. Yohimbine is marketed for fat loss, increased energy, sexual wellness, and as a pre-workout enhancer. Although some mechanistic studies suggest it may promote lipolysis by increasing norepinephrine, human evidence for fat loss and performance is limited. Like all stimulants, yohimbine influences heart rate, blood pressure, and nervous system activity. Knowing the basics sets the stage for understanding how it interacts with caffeine and why dosing and product quality matter so much. This slide digs into how yohimbine is thought to work. It acts as an antagonist at alpha-2 adrenergic receptors. Under normal circumstances, these receptors inhibit norepinephrine release. Blocking them raises norepinephrine levels, which in theory increases lipolysis. Supporters of yohimbine claim that this increased norepinephrine leads to greater fat breakdown. However, a plausible mechanism does not equate to proven fat loss. Human trials showing meaningful reductions in body fat are scarce and inconsistent. Furthermore, increased norepinephrine can heighten feelings of anxiety and cause cardiovascular strain. Understanding the underlying mechanism helps us recognize why yohimbine has both perceived benefits and significant risks, especially when combined with other stimulants that also elevate catecholamines. Caffeine is the world's most widely consumed stimulant. It works primarily by blocking adenosine receptors in the brain, preventing the onset of drowsiness and promoting alertness. This antagonism increases the release of other neurotransmitters, such as dopamine and norepinephrine, enhancing focus and perceived energy. Performance research shows that doses between 3 and 6 milligrams per kilogram of body weight can improve endurance and some strength measures. However, exceeding 400 milligrams per day, about 4 strong cups of coffee, commonly triggers jitteriness, anxiety, digestive upset, and sleep disruption. Individual sensitivity to caffeine varies widely. Some people feel fine at relatively high doses, while others experience overstimulation with as little as 100 milligrams. These fundamentals underscore why caution is needed when stacking caffeine with another stimulant like yohimbine. Although caffeine is familiar to most people, its side effects can be significant at higher doses. Rapid heart rate and palpitations are common when intake is high, or when consumed in concentrated forms like energy drinks or tablets. Blood pressure can rise, particularly if you are sensitive to stimulants. Jitters, anxiety, insomnia, and nausea often accompany high doses, especially when multiple cups of coffee or large pre-workout scoops are consumed. Sensitivity varies from person to person, so a dose that feels normal for one individual might be overwhelming for another. When considering stacking with yohimbine, these side effects do not disappear, instead they are compounded. Awareness of how caffeine alone affects you can help you judge whether adding an additional stimulant is wise. This slide highlights the physiological interactions between yohimbine and caffeine. Both compounds increase sympathetic nervous system activity. Yohimbine raises norepinephrine levels by blocking alpha-2 receptors, while caffeine reduces adenosine signaling, indirectly increasing catecholamines and neuronal firing. When combined, the result is a higher cumulative stimulation of the heart and nervous system. For many people, this means more anxiety, a greater likelihood of panic-like symptoms, and more pronounced palpitations. The risk escalates when other stimulants such as riboflavin, synephrine, or ephedrine are present in the same formula. Understanding the compounding effect of multiple stimulants helps to illustrate why stacking is risky. Each ingredient may seem manageable alone, but together they can push the body into overstimulation. Marketers often tout the combination of yohimbine and caffeine as synergistic, claiming it provides stronger energy and faster fat loss. In theory, blocking alpha-2 receptors and adenosine receptors together could heighten arousal by increasing norepinephrine and reducing fatigue. In practice, however, the combination results in more anxiety, higher heart rate, and blood pressure and significant sleep disturbances. Human studies do not demonstrate consistent improvements in fat loss or performance from stacking these stimulants. The mechanistic synergy does not translate into clear outcomes. For most people, the synergy is more accurately described as overload. The physiological stress from two stimulants exceeds any marginal benefit, reinforcing that more stimulation is not necessarily better. This slide lists common adverse effects observed when yohimbine and caffeine are combined. Anxiety and panic-like symptoms are among the most frequently reported, as both stimulants heighten sympathetic activity. Rapid heart rate and palpitations are signs that your cardiovascular system is under strain. Elevated blood pressure and headaches often occur, particularly in those sensitive to stimulants. Nausea, vomiting, and other gastrointestinal distress can also accompany high stimulant intake. Finally, insomnia and restlessness are typical, especially when the stack is taken later in the day. Recognizing these symptoms early is essential. If you experience any of them while using yohimbine, caffeine, or both, it's a signal to stop and reassess your approach. After reviewing the research, it becomes clear that the benefits of stacking yohimbine and caffeine are modest at best. There is limited evidence that the combination leads to greater fat loss or better exercise performance compared with either stimulant alone. Meanwhile, side effects are common and can be severe, including anxiety, elevated heart rate, hypertension, and gastrointestinal issues. When benefits are small and inconsistent, but risks are well documented and pronounced, the scale tips toward caution. The slide's message is straightforward. Your health and well-being are more important than chasing a tiny improvement in appearance or energy. In most cases, the limited benefits do not justify the high likelihood of adverse reactions. Mechanistic arguments can be alluring. Alpha-2 receptor blockade and adenosine antagonism sound like sophisticated ways to increase fat mobilization and arousal. However, mechanisms do not automatically translate into real-world fat loss or muscle gain. Human trials examining the combination of yohimbine and caffeine are few, small, and often produce inconsistent results. Some studies may observe an acute increase in metabolic rate or perceived energy, but long-term changes in body composition or performance are not reliably documented. This slide emphasizes that understanding a biochemical pathway is not the same as demonstrating a meaningful outcome. When deciding whether to use a supplement, Look for studies measuring actual fat loss, strength gains, or endurance improvements, not just mechanistic markers. Yohimbine bark extracts and products containing yohimbine vary widely in their actual content. Some capsules contain almost no yohimbine, while others provide far more than the label suggests. Proprietary blends exacerbate this problem by hiding the exact amounts of each stimulant, making it impossible to know your true dosage. Multi-ingredient formulas often sneak in additional stimulants like rauvolsine or phenephrine, which intensify the effects of yohimbine and caffeine. These hidden risks mean that even if you think you are taking a moderate dose, you may actually be ingesting a dangerous cocktail. Always scrutinize ingredient lists, avoid proprietary blends when possible, and opt for products that disclose precise amounts and undergo third-party testing. Regulatory oversight of Yohimbine and Yohimbine products varies across countries. Some nations have outright bans on Yohimbine bark extracts due to safety concerns. In the United States, these products are not prohibited by the Department of Defense as of early 2025, but caution is strongly advised. Product quality is inconsistent, and untested supplements may contain contaminants or unexpected amounts of stimulants. Third-party testing can help verify ingredients and dosages, but not all companies invest in such quality controls. Service members, athletes, and anyone subject to drug testing should be mindful of local regulations and potential organizational restrictions. Inconsistent labeling and regulation are another reason to approach combined stimulants with skepticism. Not everyone reacts the same way to stimulants, but certain groups should avoid the yohimbine and caffeine combination altogether. Individuals with anxiety or panic disorders are at high risk of worsening symptoms. Those with hypertension, arrhythmias, or any cardiovascular disease face elevated risk of serious heart events. People experiencing PTSD or high stress sensitivity should also stay away. The heightened arousal can trigger distress. Pregnant or breastfeeding individuals or those under 18 should avoid these stimulants due to unknown effects on development. Using antidepressants, blood pressure medications, or other stimulants can lead to dangerous interactions. Anyone with kidney, liver, or heart concerns should also avoid stacking stimulants. When in doubt, consult a healthcare professional before trying any combination of stimulants. To assess the strength of the evidence, this slide divides it into tiers. At the mechanistic level, combining an alpha-2 antagonist yohimbine with an adenosine antagonist caffeine clearly increases norepinephrine and arousal. At the limited tier, human evidence for fat loss and performance enhancement is scarce and inconsistent. At the high caution tier, reports of anxiety, spikes in heart rate and blood pressure, arrhythmias, and seizures underscore serious risks. The stacking risk tier highlights that combining multiple stimulants significantly increases cardiovascular load. Finally, the label risk tier points out that product content varies widely and proprietary blends conceal dosages and hidden ingredients. Recognizing these tiers clarifies that while there is a plausible mechanism, the data supporting real-world benefits are weak and the risks are substantial. This slide dispels common misconceptions about stacking yohimbine and caffeine. Myth: stacking ensures faster fat loss. Fact: no human data shows superior fat loss versus using single stimulants or just following a good diet and exercise plan. Myth: more stimulants equal better performance. Fact: performance benefits are inconsistent and small. The extra stimulation mostly adds anxiety and cardiovascular strain. Myth: caffeine cancels yohimbine side effects. Fact: both compounds increase norepinephrine and sympathetic nervous system activity. Side effects add up rather than cancel out. Myth: all labels disclose stimulant content. Fact: the actual content of yohimbine and other stimulants varies widely, and proprietary blends often hide specific dosages. Understanding the reality behind these myths helps you make more informed decisions about supplementation. Here we present practical safety advice for anyone considering stimulants. First, avoid stacking yohimbine and caffeine with other stimulants such as rauvolsine, phenephrine, or ephedrine. Each stimulant adds stress to your cardiovascular system, and combining them multiplies the risk. Second, monitor your heart rate and blood pressure regularly. If you notice an unexpected increase, stop use immediately. Third, if you experience anxiety, palpitations, or signs of hypertension, discontinue the supplement and seek medical guidance. Fourth, consult healthcare professionals before using stimulants, particularly if you have any existing health conditions or are taking medication. Finally, recognize that label risk and unregulated doses mean that even careful planning cannot completely eliminate the dangers of stacking stimulants. The presentation reminds us that lasting fat loss and fitness progress come from proven methods, not stimulant stacks. Creating a calorie deficit is the fundamental driver of fat loss. Resistance training helps preserve muscle mass. while losing fat and contributes to a higher metabolic rate. Prioritizing protein in your diet supports muscle repair and satiety. Sleep matters too. Aim for 7 to 9 hours per night to regulate hormones and optimize recovery. Well-supported supplements like caffeine, when used alone and responsibly, creatine and beta-alanine can offer small performance boosts. By focusing on these basics rather than chasing a stimulant high, you will achieve healthier and more sustainable results. Shortcuts rarely lead to long-term success. This slide summarizes the overall evaluation of combining yohimbine with caffeine. Evidence supporting greater fat loss or performance enhancement is limited and inconsistent. There is no reliable proof that stacking these stimulants leads to better results than using either one alone or sticking to fundamental nutrition and training principles. On the other hand, the potential for anxiety, spikes in heart rate and blood pressure, and even serious cardiac events is high. Safer and more effective methods such as creating a calorie deficit, lifting weights, and using well-studied ergogenic aids are readily available. In summary, the risk far outweighs the reward, making it prudent to avoid stacked stimulants. The final verdict emphasizes that stacking yohimbine and caffeine amplifies stimulation and risk. Anxiety, elevated heart rate and blood pressure, and general cardiovascular stress are common outcomes. The evidence for meaningful fat loss or performance gains is limited and inconsistent. For beginners and even many experienced lifters, this combination is not advisable. There are safer ways to achieve goals without jeopardizing health. The slide concludes that your long-term well-being matters more than the short-lived buzz from an overstimulating supplement. The rational choice for most people is to skip the stack and instead focus on diet, training, and proven, single-ingredient ergogenic aids used responsibly. The final slide serves as a disclaimer and cautionary note. This presentation is educational and not a substitute for professional medical advice. Do not combine yohimbine with caffeine or other stimulants without consulting a healthcare provider. If you are pregnant, breastfeeding, under 18, or have anxiety disorders, cardiovascular issues, or other health concerns, avoid these stimulants altogether. Even if you decide to use a stimulant individually, seek personalized guidance from a qualified professional to assess risks and monitor your health. Education and caution are key to making informed decisions about supplementation.